These are the best Commander cards of the entire year. It's the top 23 of 2023.
I'm Mia, and I like cats.
I'm BZ, and I love countdowns. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., which means when you go to buy cards from Cool Stuff like you were going to do anyway, you can use code
NERDS
at checkout to save 5% of your dollars on that order.
Real money tax dollars can also be saved if you go to Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
You can use the code
NERDS
at checkout to save 5% of your entire purchase.
We got the links. They're in the descriptions. They're saving you money. There's a Moxfield ad. We're going to bamboozle you. Feel free to try to guess when, but you will fail. And happy birthday to everyone whose birthday is today. So this is like one of our favorite countdowns of the year because it's the top 23 cards that were released this year. Only first printings are taken into account. No reprints or anything. This is the best new Commander cards.
Before we get into the list, though, we do have a couple honorable mentions. These are Aloran's Searing Light and Legolas's Quick Reflexes from the holiday edition of the Lord of the Rings release.
Yeah, we can't be 100% sure how these cards are going to perform. They look pretty good, but I haven't seen them enough, and they don't look busted enough for me to automatically throw them. There are some Lord of the Rings cards on here because they look like surefire things, but these ones I'm not so sure about. We'll have to see like next year how they end up doing. But let's get to number 23. Mia, what do we got?
We've got Cyber Conversion. Blue for an instant. You turn target creature face down. It's a 2/2 instead. I think this is really cool considering it's like Kenny's transformation but in blue. Just a way to trap a commander on the board.
Yeah, it's like Reality Shift, except they can't turn the creature face up like they can with manifesting, and it can trap their commander on the board. So like, this is a really tempting removal spell. Is one of the only cards from Doctor Who that I think is like, broadly playable in the format. So I gotta get this card into some decks because it looks like the real deal.
I'm really excited to see it in some decks too. I mean, good removal never goes out of style.
Let's move on to number 22. It's Roaming Throne. It's a 4-mana 4/4, and you choose a creature type, and it triggers those abilities a second time whenever the triggered ability of that source happens. It's a very, very, very hyped up card. To me, though, outside of like your Kindred decks, it feels kind of win more. A lot of people are saying, I'm putting Roaming Throne in my deck because my commander has a triggered ability. And I don't know if that's the right way to go about playing this card.
I mean, I do want to test it in Kindred decks. I want to put it in Edgar maybe because, this is a pretty powerful golem / whatever you want it to be. However, I think it is like Lithoform Engine because you could copy abilities left and right with that. And of course, there is no cost associated with this minus just the casting cost. But would you put Lithoform in everything, even if you did have the mana to activate it every time?
Yeah, it kind of feels like, Sakashimas or those clones where it's like, yeah, I want my commander. Would I play the clones that say I can clone my commander? I don't often do that. I think that's more of if I'm winning already, I'm going to be winning by even more type scenario. But if I'm behind, this card might screw me out of like recovering. So we're not huge fans, but I do recognize there's power here. So I think number 22 is fair.
I want to see it in action a little bit more, but I think it'll really shine in the Kindred decks. Number 21 is Filter Out. 1 blue, return all non-creature, non-land permanents to their owner's hands. I think this is a very good like budgety Psych Rift type deal.
This card's seeing a lot of play, and it's kind of hyped up. Like, it doesn't remove the creatures, but it can undo someone's entire game progress up until a certain point. It's really cheap to cast, and when you're a creature deck, like maybe a Flicker deck or something like that, you have no downside for this card.
I mean, this is going to completely hose artifact and enchantment decks, and I kind of just want to see it in action. I probably will throw it in a budget build, considering it is only a few cents right now.
And it's just another way to make sure that you don't die to these like overwhelming board states. Sometimes it's hard to keep these non-creature permanents in check, and this is like such a good way to do that. Really, really cool card. Let's go to number 20. This is Blossoming Tortoise from Wilds of Eldraine. 4-mana 3/3, ETB your attacks, you mill 3, get a land back. Your land's got other abilities that's not really that relevant. Just for me, 4-mana 3/3 enters and it fuels itself. It digs for the lands that it will then get back, and it works again next turn. If you can play like a 3-mana haste enabler like Fires of Yavimaya or Rhythm of the Wild or something, and then play this on turn 4, you are like dominating.
Yeah, when we've seen it in games, we did see it with haste, and it was incredibly powerful.
It doesn't care about what kind of land you get back. It's just any land. This is as good in lands decks. I think it's really good in graveyard decks. It kind of just does a little bit of everything, and it triggers right away. So it's not a card that you have to wait to untap with. It's just good. Like, this is so powerful.
We were pretty hyped about this in Wilds, and I know you love the graveyard stuff. You love your land stuff, so
I enjoy every single word on this card. Even the land creatures get +1/+1. I even care about that.
It does matter in some cases. Number 19 is Galadriel's Dismissal. White for an instant, but you can pay 2 and a white as a kicker cost. Target creature phases out, but if it was kicked, each creature the target player controls phases out. We actually talked with our friend Kuro about this, and it's pretty interesting considering you can phase all of your stuff out for a board wipe, for instance. However, you can also phase out other people's blockers if you just want to swing in for a combat meta win.
Yeah, end of their turn, or whatever, they go to combat or something, you phase out all their creatures. Now everyone is free to just attack this person and take them out of the game. Maybe you can reach some kind of deal, but the fact that this is not only versatile and that you can save one of your creatures or all of your creatures, but it's even more versatile because you can sort of remove a creature from existence really quick if you need that sort of tempo, or remove every creature from that one player out of the game and just kill them. This card is clearly strong, and I don't even need to see this to know that this text box is very strong. I'm just going to be curious how brutal that second mode of the offensive mode can be.
Honestly, I think we're going to see it more as offensive than defensive, considering there are things like Teferi's Protection if you just want to have full protection, but when things phase out, you're kind of vulnerable if someone does a board wipe right after your turn, and you can still, other people can rebuild with haste enablers and that sort of thing. So I could see this being used more offensively than defensively.
Next up is number 18, Bloodletter of Aclazotz. It's a 4-mana 2/4 flyer, and if opponent would lose life during your turn, they lose twice that much life instead. This one was really interesting because usually all of the double life loss cards are 8 mana, and you're way overpaying for some flampling monster that you don't care about when you just want the double damage thing. And this is that on a 4-mana flyer, and I'm scared of this card. If they play this card, I know that I'm dead to a lot of the target player, where each opponent loses half their life rounded up.
8 mana Flampler, you could just say Archfiend of Despair. You know it's coming. However, this is a really good effect because, especially in combat metas and that sort of thing, most of the life lost for your opponents will be on your turn if you're swinging in for big bits of damage.
Yeah, that's almost all of it anyway. You really don't give up a ton by making it only on your turn. It's kind of like a just kill it on sight, because if you let this thing go for 2 or 3 turns, you target something else, you're gonna get got, and it's gonna feel bad. What's number 17? Another black card.
Number 17 is something that I really love playing recently. Breach the Multiverse. 7-mana sorcery. Each player mills 10 cards, and you can choose a creature or a planeswalker from each person's graveyard and put them onto the field under your control. Yeah, they're Phyrexians too, but getting 4 creatures out of the graveyard is so nice. Plus, it doesn't have to be out of the 10 milled.
Yeah, this is a 4-for-1, and this doesn't really fold to graveyard hate either. If someone's got a Scavenging Ooze, you can just fire off a Breach the Multiverse. Don't worry about it, because the spell resolves the entire way without you targeting anything. So there's no moment where the spell is resolving that they can do anything about it. This card, it's honestly just slapped. It scales more or less with the power level of the decks you're playing against. It is 7 mana. That's probably the only knock I have on this card, is that it's pretty pricey. So it's not like a CDH card or anything. Not that we talk about that, but once you hit the premium cost of the spell, you are dominating the game for sure.
Honestly, if you can put this in one of your decks, I highly recommend it. Not only is it a lot of value because 4 bodies for 7 mana is pretty good, it's just fun to resolve.
Yeah, and I don't know, what does this card really ask of you? Nothing. It fuels itself by 1,000,000%. So just get this card in your decks, and I think it'll crush games for you. So number 16 here, moving on. Hoarding Broodlord. It's like a Runescar demon, but you can convoke it, and then the spell you get with it is kind of protected. It's not really in your hand, it's in exile, and you can convoke that also. This card, such a big improvement on that clunky demon that I really don't ever play. This is not just some big giant monster that you have to wait until turn 8 to resolve. You can cast this thing on turn 5, no problem.
I play it in my CEDH deck. However, it does have a lot of usefulness if you can put it in a tokens deck or something. And it's really nice because, as BZ mentioned earlier, it does have protection because the spell is not in your hand, whatever you tutor for. So if you get wheeled or something, it doesn't go to your graveyard.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff you can do with this card. A lot of people talk about Saw in Half. You can get it and then cast it right away, and then you get 2 more triggers with 2 more bodies that can convoke things. It's really this thing could go either really, really sweaty or really, really fun, but either way, you're going to get there fast because it's just a good Magic card.
Plus 7 power in the air is usually a lot, and usually people can get through. That's a good chunk of damage.
Yeah, and if you want to build a deck where you can get through chunks of damage, I would say Moxfield.com's got to be your best bet. You can sort and tag your cards in a custom fashion. Say, I only want to know about which cards came out in 2023. Well, I can tag it and say these are the 2023 cards, like Hoarding Broodlord.
I really love Moxfield because there's a way where you can actually use bookmarks and put multiple deck lists in the same bookmark and then just have one link and then it just goes to all of the decks.
Yeah, for example, we were just on Play to Win playing some CEDH with Cam and Dylan, and if you go to the description of that video, you can click and just see all of our deck lists in one spot, which you can then click on instead of here's the Carado deck list, here's the Colorado deck list. You know, it's kind of like a lot of space. Moxfield's just out here saving lives.
Moxfield really does have it all.
They really do. Let's go to number 15. We got Clever Concealment. 2 white, instant convoke. Any number of target non-land permanents you control phase out. This is one of my favorite versions. And as far as like protecting your board goes, I think this is like the best one. Defense Protection gives you a wider range of protection from things, that fogs and stuff. So that card maybe it's probably still better, but like for protecting your board, if you're holding up creatures, this is 0 mana. There's no way to see this coming. And it doesn't just save your creatures, it saves all of your non-land permanents.
Yeah, BC loves the whole convoke spells. Just
love
in
'em.
general, he loves not keeping up mana going, well, actually.
They're underrated for sure.
But it is really great because it's just non-land permanents. It's not just the creatures that you are phasing out.
Yeah, there's actually other bonuses too. Like for some reason, this card targets all of them. So there's a lot of cards that can care about whenever it becomes the target of something. You get all those triggers, so that's nice. You know, triggers heroic and whatnot. You know, there's a couple like cards that say when this is targeted, draw a card. Sure, extra value, why not? Yeah, really hard to predict. Board wipe blowout that can win you games and save your dudes from spot removal or whatever you want to dodge. Super sweet.
Yeah, it is a really cool card, and I want to see it more in games. Number 14 is Mondrag, Glory Dominus. 4 mana for a 4/4, double tokens, and you can pay 3 mana and sack 2 other artifacts or creatures and put an indestructible counter on him. This was a really cool addition from All Will Be One, considering you can make him indestructible, so he does get around that little bit of like vulnerability.
It's like, oh no, you know, anointed perception on a creature, great, but it's a little bit more vulnerable. No, don't worry about it. You can pay 1 mana and sack some dudes, pay some life, and now it's indestructible, not just for the turn, just kind of forever. It's got a counter on it. Really, really sweet. You can even do other stuff of like, you can pay this cost multiple times and then use nesting grounds to put an indestructible counter on something else. Like, really cool niche synergies, but on its face, this is Parallel Lives. This is another Anointed Procession. It can go in the command zone, but we're just talking about 99 here. This card slaps. Like, it's really tough. It's going to create like a, oh no, whatever I thought was happening in this game, it's actually twice as bad.
White token decks did not need this, and yet they're still getting it. You can make double treasures, double 1/1 soldiers, whatever you really need, and that's like really powerful.
Yeah, let's go on to a green card, and if you haven't noticed, 2023, kind of the year of the Abzan cards. There is 1 red card on this entire list, and there might be like 2 or 3 blue ones. Next is Galta Stampede Tyrant, an 8 mana 12/12 that puts all your creatures from your hand onto the battlefield when it enters the battlefield. Not when you cast it, not if you cast it, not if it entered from your hand or whatever. Just put them all into play. You get the trigger no matter what.
I'm surprised that it is enter the battlefield because it's so easy to flicker, especially if you can draw a bunch of cards.
Reanimate this thing, pair it with all of the like Garrick's Uprising and Guardian Project so that when Galta enters, it draws a card, gives you a little bit more cards to look at, and then when they all enter, you just refill your hand anyway, and you don't even care what happens.
Really? I was thinking maybe like a Life's Legacy, not dead yet after all, whatever.
Why not?
And then you just have all those cards. You know, it's better. It's a better version of Last March of the Ents because you can repeat it.
Yeah, you kind of want to be like a big, dumb green deck. As long as you got 6s, 7s, and 8s, and you can kind of cheat this out in some way or another, maybe some games, this is going to be so good for you. Green Stompy decks, like, this is probably one of the premier 8 drops in the format now, and green decks are better for it. You know, they're stronger now than a year ago when this thing didn't exist.
I'm putting it in Sylvala as soon as I can get my hands on a copy of it.
Yeah, all right, next is a land cycle. This is the Minas Tirith cycle. I'll just read Minas Tirith. They all have this general vibe. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a legendary creature. Taps for a white, and you can pay 1 and a white, tap it to draw a card, only if you attack with 2 or more creatures this turn. They've all got like a pretty undercosted ability that is restricted based on something. If you attacked, or you exile cards from your graveyard, or you control a legendary creature, they're all pretty good. It turns out, if your commander's cheap, or if you've got a lot of legendary creatures in your deck, they're basically just better than a Plains. So it's really hard to exclude these from your decks. Minas Tirith is in like 50,000 decks.
It's basically a free roll, and it really helps you for that monocolor Field of the Dead mana base.
No, it really does. You know, those of you who have tried it probably know one, but me, it's good. It's great for that. Especially Minas Tirith. I think Minas Tirith is the best one by a fair bit, but I wanted to mention them all because in 1 and 2 color decks specifically, they're close to free rolls. They're not literally free rolls. If your commander's 6 mana and you're trying to go fast, I wouldn't bother.
It's a lot of value on the card. So if you are playing a little bit more casual or budget or whatever, these aren't competitive cards, but these are good value. Moving on to number 11 is another land, the Mycosynth Gardens. You could tap to add colorless, 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color, or you could pay X and tap it and it becomes a copy of target non-token artifact you control with mana value X. As BZ really likes this card, and it's basically a free roll in any 1 or 2 color artifact deck.
Yeah, it's seeing a lot of play as well, and why not? Like, it enters untapped. It makes a mana right away. It's not one of those lands that, from like 2001 that doesn't make mana. It's great. It's kind of like in the late game, you can just use your land, turn it into a literal spell by just copying your best thing on board. It doesn't even say sorcery speed, so you can hold this up, bluff an instant, or have an instant, and just have this as a backup if nobody pressures you, and you can go, oh, great, time to make your lives even worse. It's something that opponents can forget about, because, like, I don't know, I'm not reading all of your lands every 5 seconds. Just more value for you, right?
Okay, so what are you copying with this? I know you have to put in Brutaclad, but are you copying Staff of Nin?
You could copy Staff of Nins. You could copy things that are like actually good Magic cards, like Soul Ring or like Worn Power Stone on the cheap. Copy a Sad Robot in response to a board wipe if you really need a card. Like, there's a lot of stuff to do with this. It really just depends. And the other thing I was thinking too is this doesn't have to be a card that only goes in your artifact decks. If you're a 1-color deck and you got like 10 artifacts in it anyway, you could probably just play this card. It's really good. And I'm going to call myself out for underplaying this thing because, Obi-Wan came out. It wasn't the most hyped set. People kind of, all the Infect cards rose to the top. People forgot about this a little bit.
I definitely want to try it out. Unfortunately, my artifact-based deck is 5 colors, so I can't run it there. But I do want to try it in something else with a few more artifacts.
Yeah, this is your PSA. Seriously, this is like probably the biggest free roll on this list, so try it out if you haven't. The only card that might be a bigger free roll than that one was Mount Doom. It's number 10. It enters on tap, and you pay a life to add a black or red. Already, if this land has other words on it, it's free in any 2 or 3 color, red-black deck. You can deal 1 damage to each opponent by paying 3 and tapping it, or if you've got a certain artifact that may appear later on this list, you can pay 7 and have it be a freaking board wipe, because why not?
I really like this because it's Sulphur Springs but better, but I also do have this in my CEDH deck because it combos with World Gorger and Animate Dead.
Yeah, it's got actual combos on it. It's so much better than Sunscorched Desert. So Mount Doom might be the doom for you. You might actually lose for that stupid pay 3, sometimes deal a damage to each opponent. I'm glad that that's on there, because if it enters untapped and it makes red or black by paying a life, seriously, I'm just going to play that card for mana fixing. So the fact that there's other words on it, end step, I can deal 1 to you, untap, deal 1 to you. All of a sudden, my land, if you get fly too close to the sun, my land will pressure your life total, and that's nice and valuable. This card is sweet. There's really nothing wrong with it. I mean, I can't think of anything wrong with it. It's just, how high could this card place on a list? Probably not much higher than number 10.
The only thing that I'm sad about is the fact that we didn't get more color combos from Lord of the Rings regarding kind of this cycle. I would have liked to see a lot more.
I always want a cycle. They don't always deserve a cycle, but I always want one. Number 9, as we break in further into the top 10, Fairy Masterminds. 2/1 flash flyer. Opponents drawing 2 cards gives you another card. You can pay 4 to have each player draw a card. You don't really have to activate that ability too often, but I like that it's there as an emergency button. Normally I don't want everybody to draw 1, but when you draw extra, that's pretty cool. And when you start stacking that last ability, you can really cash in. But really, this is just, hey, you're going to be drawing extra cards? I'll do it for no effort.
I mean, that's just Commander in a nutshell, right? Plus the fact that this asks nothing of you. It just asks that you're playing against people who like having card advantage.
Yeah, what does your deck need to look like if you want to include Fairy Mastermind?
Blue.
Islands. You got islands in the deck because you can cast this card, and it really could just go in any blue deck. I don't know if it should go in every blue deck, but Jesus, it's really free.
I really want to put this in my card draw deck. I'm really excited to, especially since I'm pretty sure the price did fall since it's come out.
Yeah, it also kind of wombo combos with certain things. If you've got the Monarch running around, this card is great. You're like, guys, take the Monarch from me. I don't even care. I'll get the card anyway. I'll be the Monarch on everyone's turn. Yeah, Fairy Mastermind, really sweet. Another card that I'm just when you see it, you're like, ooh, I can't let that stick around too long. Next, we got number 8, Moonshaker Cavalry from Wilds of Eldraine. It's an 8-mana 6/6 flyer, and it gives your dudes +X/+X flying. X is the number of dudes you have. This is the white Craterhoof. It is at least 1 step below Craterhoof in power level because you don't get trample, which is huge. It's the best form of evasion when you create 100 power. It's even better than flying, but flying is the next best thing, and this will easily KO 1, 2, or maybe all 3 of your opponents as long as you have enough creatures. This card is is pretty sick. It's probably going to see a little bit less play than you would think because people know that this kind of thing is unfun.
I mean, I would love to have flamplers in the air. However, they're probably going to have a lot less flying blockers than you have flying attackers, so I don't think it'll be too bad.
Yeah, if you have 10 creatures, now you have 100 power in the air. How many flyers could they really have? One chump block will take out 10 of that, but attack responsibly. You're gonna KO one or two people for sure. This card is kind of just a white staple, right? Like across almost any white creature deck, I would say this card makes your deck better.
In the combat metas, definitely.
Yeah, maybe not more fun, but it makes your deck better for sure.
I mean, it's a finisher, right? We need those in Magic.
I respect a good finisher. Get your Chroma's Wills, get your Moonshaker Cavalries, and you're going to mess people up. Next is also a white card. It's number 7. What do we got?
We got Elish Norn, Mother of Machines, or Mommy. 5 mana for a 4/7 Vigi. Permanents entering the battlefield for you, double. Permanents entering the battlefield for opponents, no.
No. There is no fun to be had for that. It shuts off Field of the Dead, which makes me very, very sad. It's kind of like Elish Norn's thing, because the other Elish Norn, the original, also kind of shuts off Field of the Dead by just killing all the zombies. Elish Norn hates that card. But this card got a lot of flack when it first came out because it's unfun. I want to trigger my abilities, and I don't want them doubling theirs. Panharmonicon's already so good. And it has not been that. Like, it hasn't been, bannable. Oh my god, ban this card. Emergency. But it's been really, really good. You got to respect this card when it comes down. You know that trouble is afoot. Not only because you can't trigger some of your cool stuff, but they're going to run you over with their blink stuff.
Panharmonicon is really, really good for those certain decks. However, it also attacks pretty well considering it does have Vigilance and it's 4 power. If you have her as a commander, that can chip in over a game.
You'll get your chips in for sure. A 4 power Vigilance, you're basically indestructible because it has way too much toughness. It's not going to die in combat, yeah. This card does a lot of things pretty well. Yeah, it's honorary stacks piece almost.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
But for you red mages out there, this is your one card of the year that you get that doesn't suck. It's Itali, Primal Conqueror, and it's not even mono red.
Hope you like green.
Yeah, 5 red for a 7/7 Trampler, ETB. Everybody flips till they hit a card. You cast all 4 of them for free if you want to. Then it flips into a Blightsteel Colossus variant. This card is just unbelievably strong. Kind of embarrassing. Maybe I'll save this for a cards we got wrong type thing, but this wasn't even in our March of the Machine top 10. Look, we make mistakes, okay? Everybody makes mistakes. But holy crap, this card is good. It dominates games by itself. We're not even talking about how brutal and oppressive it can be as a commander. But just in the 99, this is one of the best 7-drops I've ever seen.
Don't group me in with your mistakes of March of Machines. I wasn't here for that. However, the fact that it can't whiff is so powerful.
It takes away all of the tension that makes the old Itali very powerful but fun, and it just goes, holy crap, we're dead. We're dead. You hit 2 creatures with ETBs, you hit some kind of card draw spell, and you hit a removal spell that's going to take out 2 of my creatures, and you get a 7/7, and it's still in play, and like Galta, doesn't care if you cast it or reanimate it or whatever, so feel free to break it and cheat the ETB again.
It doesn't matter whether you cast it or whether you flicker it, it's just a lot of value, so you're just going to be having the best of times, and everyone else is just going to be like, oh, tell me when something really impactful happens for us.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I've played this card. I had it in a budget deck. It was a $50 deck, but this card recently spiked to $25, so I'm so sad to take it out of that deck because that $50 deck was real percentage points better because Itali was in it. Wow, this card slaps.
But now we're at our top 5, and number 5 is Agatha's Soul Cauldron. 2 mana artifact, you can spend mana as though or mana of any color to activate abilities of creatures you control. Creatures you control with 1/1 counters on them have all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled under it, and if you tap it and exile a card from a graveyard, when a creature card is exiled this way, you put a 1/1 counter on target creature you control. This is a big part of other 3-card combos, and it's really, really powerful considering you can slot it in any deck.
This has got a lot to unpack. It's got so much going on. It is the centerpiece of a ton of 3-card combos. Most of them have a bunch of trashy cards, but some of them are very playable, like Grist, the Hunger Tide, and any card that says your creatures enter with counters on them, so Master Biomancer or whatever. That lets every new insect that comes in off the +1s that Grist grants your creatures just to do that same thing, then you just mill your whole deck, and obviously you win from there. But the fact that this is just graveyard hate, you can hold it up, snipe a card that someone's trying to reanimate, or more realistically, stop people from playing targeted reanimate spells. And then when it gets to your turn, right before then, you just take your best creature or the best creature in anyone's graveyard and just and have the activated abilities go on the cards that you control. But it doesn't even just do that because it just gives you a counter for free. So now I'm thinking, well, maybe +1/+1 counters decks just want this card because it just puts a bunch of counters on your team and then gives you awesome abilities, and like it fuels itself, and there's really no way to go wrong with this card. It is kind of busted.
I mean, it's so powerful. It comes down super early. It can snipe cards from any graveyard, and it would be a lot better if it was just cards from your graveyard had the activated abilities, because it would still be comboing, but it would be a little bit more toned back. But any graveyard, it's just Scoos on steroids.
You really got to be careful around a Soul Cauldron. And up to number 4 now, from the same set, it's Beseech the Mirror, 1 black sorcery, bargain, and if you bargain it, the card you search for, you can cast for free if it costs 4 or less. Yeah, this card is a really strong tutor. I kind of haven't been expecting Wizards to print too many like bonkers tutors lately, because I felt the design space was like pretty much solved. It's like, all right, 2 mana tutor's busted, 3 mana tutor, some people might play it. 4 mana tutor, kind of bad. Most people don't do it. And then they're like, well, 4 mana tutor, but also it just casts as a card. So it's almost like this is the best card in my deck on the stack right now. Like Beseech the Mirror, not only does it combo, not only does it just have extra, spell slinging type synergies, the bargain's pretty easy to pay for. A lot of black decks are playing mana rocks anyway, and you got to watch out for this because it's one of the best tutors maybe in the past 10 years.
I've had really good luck with it, and it's just super powerful considering you don't search before it's resolved, obviously, but you can just search for something and then have a Grand Abolisher come in, and then they can't do anything.
All right, it's like, this is on the stack now. Did you expect that? Probably not. A lot of one card win the game type scenarios with this, but you don't have to cast it that way. That's more of a CEDH type thing. This is just the best 4-drop. It's like Beseech. Okay, well, I'll go get Necropotence. I'll go get Damnation. I'll go get Benevolent Offering to gain a bunch of life. Tutors are good. I don't know how much we needed to say that tutors are good. It's the best card in your deck at any given moment. Just make sure your deck is skewed a little bit towards 4 or less, right? Getting a 5-drop with this is pretty bad.
Yeah, it's like it can ramp you really fast. It could just get your best 4-drop or less. And, there are a couple things on this list coming up that you might want to get with it.
Yeah, I actually challenge you to pause the video real quick and try to guess what our top 3 are. I think they're very guessable. They're all from the same set. So number 3 will be a huge hint. What do we got?
Number 3 is Delighted Halfling, the best mana dork for Commander. It's green for a 1/2. You tap it to add colorless, or you tap it to add 1 mana of any color, but only for legendary spells. And they can't be countered. That's super sick, especially, it's like a Cavern of Souls for your Commander on the battlefield.
Yeah, if they just printed, Boreal Druid's a good card. If they just printed a 1 mana 1/2 that taps for a colorless, that probably would have made this list. It would have been lower on the list, but they're like, nope, it'll also mana fix you for legendary spells, and they can't be countered, which is not the hugest upside in the world, but oh my god, it's an upside. We're playing Llanowar Elves. I will play this card. It's going to mana fix my Commander at the bare minimum. Ramp me. 1 mana dorks are underrated, despite being some of the best ramp in the format. People know they're good. They're probably still underrated.
I'm just thinking about this because we were chatting about the top commanders recently and Joda decks, and the fact that they can't be countered. That's nasty.
It could swing the game in a huge fashion. It doesn't always matter, but when it does matter, it's nice to have for free. You're going to go, oh, I was trying to just ramp into my Commander, but wow, you really got screwed because you couldn't counter it. I guess I win now, thanks to Delighted Halfling.
Yeah, the Atali players probably love this.
Yeah, when your 1 mana dork can impact later turns in a huge way. Okay, what's the downside? Nothing. There's nothing. The only thing it doesn't do is color fix for non-legends.
Who cares?
In 1, 2, and 3 color decks, I don't even think that's much of an issue.
Yeah, can't be countered, and the fact that it's legendary, considering our decks revolve around legendary creatures, I don't think it matters.
Yeah, let's go to number 2. It's Orcish Bowmasters. 1 in a black, 1/1 flash, ETB, or whenever an opponent draws an extra card, you ping something for 1 and amass Orcs 1. This card just slices and dices and does a lot of different stuff. Whether you're playing casual or all the way up to competitive, this is going to pick off utility creatures, put unseen pressure on opponents to not draw too many cards at the same time or not play these wheel effects. And because this card can go face. If you get too far ahead with your card draw, your Rhystic Studying out of hand, your creatures are dead and you can't play the game. This thing, and the fact that you get 1 right away kind of makes it so that this card provides value. You can sacrifice the token, and if people keep drawing cards, you can repeatedly sacrifice the token to mass from 0 to 1 and just get a Goblin Bombardment trigger. It does just a lot for 2 mana. It doesn't even look like it does that much, but it does.
Yeah, I've sacked the Orc tokens to go find stuff with Razaketh, which has been super nasty. The only downside I could say is with things like Villas, as we talked about in a short, because it's just you're losing life drawing cards, so you could ping to the face. But that doesn't really matter. You just like you can play around it a little bit, but like still, this is such a good card. You could ping to the face, ping utility creatures, and then you're just getting free bodies from it.
Yeah, this is a card that I'm not going to go out of my way to put in all the decks that it could go in, because it's sort of a no-brainer. I think it might make the game a little bit less fun overall, just because you're going to be wiped. Like, utility creatures get eaten for breakfast by this card. So I think, I'll start trying it out, but only in higher power things. And that same issue has arisen with our next card, which is coincidentally the best commander card printed this year. I don't even think it's that close. This is the One Ring. You probably knew it. Indestructible, ETB if you cast it. You gain protection from everything until your next turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 for each burden counter on it, and it taps to put a burden counter on it, and then draws you a card for each burden counter on it. Not only does the life scale pretty slowly and matter less because we're in a 40 life format, but it front loads the value. So I draw a card before I take damage. Then I draw 2 cards before I take 2 damage. And I can find a way to bargain or sacrifice this or do whatever to it to make sure it goes away before I'm taking 8 damage. But the secret is, when this is at 8 counters, you just win the game. You don't have to worry about dying next turn. You drew, 15, 25 cards.
I've definitely drawn 15 cards off of this in 3 or 4 turns, considering there are proliferate synergies and stuff you could do too.
Why not?
It just gets so nasty, and it definitely didn't need the pro everything until your next turn if you cast it.
Yeah, it feels like, this card is unanswerable because it's indestructible, so it's really hard to get rid of. Well, then my next move would be all right, we got to take out the player, guys. But you just can't because they cast it, and you get protection from everything, so they're fogged for the next turn. It's this card kind of just does everything. It is, in my opinion, absolutely a card I will not pull out unless I'm playing a higher power deck.
It's only going in my high power decks. It's also really just hard to get rid of, considering you can only exile it, you could O-ring it, or make people sacrifice it. But the indestructible really does come into account a lot of the time.
Yeah, the word ban is thrown around a lot in Commander, basically whenever a new card comes out that is mythic rare. But this is the only one on this list that I would not be upset with a ban on. I wouldn't be surprised even if they said next month or 6 months from now that the One Ring is banned. I would go, yeah, I won't miss it.
The Nitpicking nerds just want to ban every ring. Soul Ring, One Ring, what's next? Wedding Ring?
Yeah, Wedding Ring's too strong. I'm trying to think of another ring. Replicating Ring?
Yeah, get it out of here.
That's too many rings. Yeah, One Ring, fantastic. Great way to round out the year. If you want to know, maybe let's take a trip down memory lane. What were the best Commander cards of 2022? You can check it out right here. And Mia's got our fact of the day for you.
Fact of the day, keep playing Magic.
Good fact.